Hello, Martin. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
I know you've got through a few challenges this morning. We won't go into them, but thanks for...
No water in the gym was the biggest challenge.
It could be an even bigger challenge for a young boxer needing a wee, but I know you're onto it. You'll get that sorted. First of all, then, I just want to ask you, and I was thinking about this earlier on. Can you remember when we first met? Because I'm not even sure if we have met in person. Actually, we did meet the other day.
Yeah, we met. We met for the Lisa and Andy stuff, and it might be that we bumped into each other along some of those meetings, which I don't necessarily go to that often. I don't know how often you attend them.
I'm not a meeting kind of...
No.
Well, not that I don't want to, I just don't have the capacity to.
No. So I just don't know, if I'm absolutely honest.
I do know, and I just thought of it now. I phoned you ages ago when I was doing a project in Artcliffe with young people that are out on the streets doing whatever they were doing. And one of them had an interest in boxing and wanted to set up a boxing club.
You came to the gym,
and I come to the gym, and I can't remember if it was you that was there or Jamie was there.
I was there, and I think Courtney showed you around as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I remember speaking to you a couple of times on the phone. And I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I remember thinking you were very helpful and not full of any kind of angle. It was all very straightforward, helpful stuff, which might sound a bit weird saying, but it's not always like that. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do know, yeah.
And I remember, and the young people set up that boxing club, and it was going for a while. It wasn't like a boxing club like what you guys run. Mm-hmm. It was a youth work space where they done box fit and various different things.
I remember them coming down.
And the young leaders were amazing, and that went on, and it's just we started about 6 months ago as a multi-sports club, run by young leaders again. But it was going for about 4 years.
Okay, that's cool.
And thanks for the advice, because thinking about it, like as much as I like watching a bit of boxing, I don't really know that much. So we got a bit of the bare bones kit. Young people learnt a little bit by going to yourselves and other people, and it was great.
Okay, good.
So thanks for that.
My pleasure.
But yeah, talking about the challenges, I want to know a little bit about you. So a little bit about the kind of things, the challenges and the positives that you felt growing up and where you grew up.
I grew up in Kingswood, working class kid. Like most people really. My dad he worked fixing machines on production lines. My mum, especially in my early years, she used to clean at Kingswood Health Centre. Didn't have very much, but I didn't know anybody who had very much, to be honest with you. Love sport, always loved sport. I think sport probably kept me out of trouble at times when people I knew were getting involved in trouble. It wasn't, I was clever, but it wasn't really cool to be clever. So at no point, like when you're a working class kid, being bright isn't really what you aspire to. So there was no university I was never going to go to university.
Well, you ain't getting any kudos points off your mates, are you?
No, nobody wants to be clever. This is the problem. So you dumb yourself down. And I remember somebody once said to me, "God, man, you're doing some O-levels." And it was a bit, because we were O-levels in like CSEs. And it one or two of them, I'm like, "But you're doing some O-levels." And it was a big, blimey. So you never want to be clever. You want to hide your cleverness. Sporting prowess gets you through a lot of it. And it was just sport was my thing, It was that I boxed, I played cricket, I played football. That was it.
What was it like growing up in your community then?
I would say, and I have this thing about it, like, so in most working class communities, and certainly they were at the time, but they were just, it was a community, everybody got on, everybody was friendly. I didn't know anybody who did anything different. I didn't know anybody who worked in an office. Like, in fact, the chap about 4 doors down, he used to, you probably won't remember, but he used to be able to collect insurance premiums door to door. Right. And that's what he did at the time.
No, I don't.
You know what I mean? And he was, and I remember thinking, God, he must be posh because he's collecting insurance premiums door to door. It was like an office for me. That was like an office job. Yeah. I didn't know anybody who worked in an office. I didn't know anybody who went to university. Like I can remember when I was growing up. Everybody around me, they had like manual jobs. We had a couple of kids who went on to, make a career, maybe a little bit in football or whatever. But that was it. There was no. There was kind of, it was just what I would call like an old-fashioned traditional working class community when everybody kind of knew each other. You'd say hello to each other, and then that was it. There was There was nothing outrageous about it. There was nothing, just people looking out for each other, people who had aspiration but were basically working class. I didn't know anybody. I had no sort of social capital at all. In fact, the first time I got a job.
I mean, I don't even really know what that is. So that probably tells the story.
Yeah, and I was, I sort of got my first job. I remember it. I was playing cricket with someone who worked in an office, and he went, "Oh, do you want to come and work for us? Because we needed a fast bowler for the team." And I was like, "Well, what have I got to do?" Because I was doing a couple of 8. He was like, "Oh, just do this." I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And I kind of went for the interview, and I got a job because I could play cricket. Is the sort of summary of it. But yeah, I didn't know no one. I didn't know anything. I was just a kid who grew up around people that were generally decent and wanted to play sport. That was it for me.
I mean, I just find it interesting, isn't it? I think most people would say that you end up, your aspirations are based on what you're surrounded by. If you don't know any different, like I ended up doing labouring and this, that, and the other, whatever the jobs were, and there wasn't any aspirations of thinking of doing other things. You're not seeing other people doing
100%.
Anything else. But then there must have been a point, and we'll come on to that, where you must have started seeing that there was other things that you could do. But I guess before jumping into that, when you were younger then, do you feel like you had your voice heard? Do you feel like there was any way or any place where people in the community or people around you or at school, you were heard? Or
it depends what you mean by heard. I mean, I grew up in an era where, like, if your parents went to the pub, they stuck you in the car and gave you like a Coke and a packet of crisps to fill the evening. Yeah. So like when you grew up in like the 70s and stuff, you weren't.
That was still happening in the 80s.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? But it was about you were a kid
didn't have a car.
And you were doing your thing, do you know what I mean? And that was it. So you weren't necessarily expected to.
If that's the norm, then you didn't know any different.
Absolutely. So am I asked my opinion? Well, no, I'm not. Did I know any kid who was asked an opinion? No, probably not. I think the only time, again, sport starts validating you is when you're playing, as I was at a relatively young age, you're playing some sport with men, and then men are listening to you or giving you advice, or do you know what I mean? And that, to be honest, I suspect that playing sport gave me more ambition than I would have had I not played it, because you've got grown-ups, people you look up to, role models, people who are good footballers or good cricketers or whatever, it's good boxers, who are kind of giving you advice or encouraging you or telling you could do something, and that is probably the switch for me.
So would you say then that, because I was going to say, do you think that it would have benefited you more when you were younger if you felt like people were listening to you and you felt like your voice was valued? But it sounds like in the situation, and I know exactly what you mean because I've had similar kind of experience in the same way, but with sport, because you're with elder people, do you feel like you're getting not mentored, but you've got some kind of relationship where because you're playing with an adult team or your older people at a younger age, there must be something that, a reason why you're being welcomed into their clan. Yeah. And suddenly then you're part of something. Is it being part of something or more that they actually were listening to what you wanted?
I'd say it's probably as much about being part of something. I always say this with the boxers, you go through something when you've got like the boxing coaching relationship. So I got boxers now 25, 30 years later that might still ring me if they've got a problem, because you go through something when you've coached them. I think when you're playing in a football team or you're playing in a cricket team or you're boxing, you build relationships. And then relationships, they're built on trust. Yeah. So there is that kind of relationship where, and then when you're like, as I was, a baby in a team, you're looked after. Like if you're on the football pitch and somebody takes a liberty with you, then somebody on the team's going to go, right, okay, I'll deal with that. Yeah. So you kind of always get yourself in a situation where you, I suppose, gain respect and a degree of equality with grown-ups. And sometimes they're grown-ups that you admire. You look at them and you think, oh, he's good or he's this, and they're spending time talking to you and they want to encourage you. So I think that actually, for me, sport unlocked a little bit of ambition, and then getting a job where I realised, and this is going to sound awful, but I realised, I'm cleverer than a lot of these people. It then made me realise that maybe I could do something, because you don't necessarily think you can, and I wasn't necessarily turned on by academic stuff, As an 18-year-old, I didn't really give a shit about Shakespeare. Some people are reading Shakespeare and getting excited, and I'm like, well, what's all this about? I'd rather go down the Rovers, But then as time gets on...
Oh, get rid of him.
I had to get that in. But as time goes on, you just change.
Yeah. I mean, look, I get it. I think as well. So when you were saying about your first job and it come from, playing sport and someone give you an opportunity, do you want to start talking to us as like what your career has been then? So where it's moved and how it's moved into sport and how it's ended up supporting young people and community.
Yeah, I mean the young person bit. This is all by accident. So I can basically.
Where did you start? Take us on a journey, because I
started in financial services.
And what were you doing there?
I was just doing basic admin.
Yeah.
So I did that. 2 jobs. I was quite. I had to pay my bills.
Yeah.
So that meant I kept changing jobs every 18 months, 2 years to get more money. So then I did a couple of financial services jobs. Then I went for a role actually, which was to do with.
Who taught you to do that though? Because even that is a strategic thing, to go every couple of years to change. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think anybody told. Well, I just had to pay the bills. I mean, you look at it and you think everything's getting dearer. How do I get more money? Well, what I'll do is I'll go and get another job. So it'll be lovely. Yeah, this is not great, is it? But it'd be lovely if I had that nice middle class environment where I have money behind me, where I thought, well, do you know what? I could spend 10 years building a career, but I didn't have that. So if I wanted to earn more dough, I had to go and earn more money. I couldn't nobody could do it for me. I had to go and earn it. And then when you're sat there and you're thinking, well, okay. I mean, we went through a thing. So who's now my wife, but Kath, when I started living with her, we had periods where it was like, do we pay the bills? Do we eat? What do we do? And we were always juggling, right? So I remember one.
How long have you been with your missus?
A while, 20 plus years, 30 years.
Okay.
I'm 50 odd now. So, and I remember we used to sit there, and I think one week, like 4 consecutive nights, we had to share a bag of chips because that was all we had. We couldn't afford nothing else.
Saves on washing up.
Well, it does, and it's like they were like 30p at the time. And I remember I had to go into work once, and I had to pay in 2 pences for the bus. Because I had no money at all. So I suppose when you're faced with that, you've got 2 choices, and you think to yourself, well, I'm either going to drown here, or I'm going to get off my ass and I'm going to try and do something. And I thought to myself, well, there ain't no glamour in being poor. Being poor is horrible. Yeah. So what I need to do is try and see if I can change my situation. So I was always like, right, I can do this, I can do that. And then I eventually was offered a job actually by somebody who just liked me.
Was this through sport again?
No, this wasn't. I was interviewed. And it was like a consultancy role for a software company, and I was young and I didn't really have any experience. And he was like, "I think you're pretty sharp. I'm going to give you a chance." And so again, then that comes back to the point. I was then dealing with a couple of people, a lot older than me, really, but they were like clever. They were, I would say, worldy. So they would go, "Oh, let's go to this restaurant," or So they started educating me about food. They educated me about wine, all the stuff I'd never have had. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have a clue. My dad would have had a pint of beer or whatever, and that was.
Yeah.
And again, in my thing, my mum never really drank, so there was none of that. None that was never around.
Yeah.
And then you met different people, and then we met different companies, and then I started to understand that not only could I do it, but I was quite good at it.
Quite good. So quite good at what part?
Understanding. So my strength has always been I solve problems quickly, and I can see things that others often can't see, and I can see them quickly. And I don't know if you ever realise that. And when you're in that situation and everybody's there going, what do I do? And I'm going, well, actually, and I can boom, 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 this is the solve. Sometimes the doing bit bores me to death. But I could fix it. I could fix it, and so that's what I could do. So that just kept happening. And then eventually I was commuting to Reading and Newbury every day. And I got to a point where it was a summer and I got stuck behind, I think it was a hay lorry on fire. And I'd got about 5 hours to get home. And in the winter, you would leave in the dark, getting home in the dark. And I went home and I just said to Kath, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to have to get another job. I ended up in Bristol. And then I started to do the analysis stuff full time. So I was working for a financial company, being a business analyst.
I don't know. I don't even know what that is. And other people might not know what that is, and many will. Just give a brief summary of what that entails.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different types, but as an analyst, part of my role was to really look at, I suppose, efficiencies, companies being well run,
so saving money in different ways.
And looking at how you could do things better, or you wanted to sell a product, well, how could you sell it, that kind of stuff. So what that gave me is it gave me I did every bit. I worked on the payroll. I worked on the accounting systems. I worked on process stuff, or process efficiency. I worked on how you could, like a company wanted to sell something for X and they couldn't work out how to do it. And then me and actually a couple of my colleagues, Dave and Simon, we'd go away and we'd spend time in them companies going, well, this is why you can't do it. So from start to finish, I had a real understanding of business, and it started to educate me on how you could do certain things and how, you know, how actually organisations could drift, how they could be wasteful, how processes are so important. So I guess that was an education. That went on for a while. I worked with really good people, they're clever people. And then I decided, my wife was pregnant, I thought I wanted to box again. So I decided to go to the Empire.
Why did you suddenly think that when your wife was pregnant?
I think
I need to get out.
Yeah, I think it was like, in all seriousness, I'm thinking I don't want to be this unfit dad. I want to be fit. Do you know what I mean? I want to bring a kid up with a dad who's fit. I tried a commercial gym. I hated it. It was soulless. They're even worse now. I do use them sometimes, but you know what I mean? The geezer on the weights rack taking photos of himself. All I want to do is go in, have a training, get out again. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to box again. Going to have one more dance under them lights and I'm going to box again. So I went to the Empire. I had a car crash in the end, couldn't box. And Chris Sanagar was like, look, you should train. Why don't you do some coaching? And I was a bit like, well, I don't really want to. And then one day, so I'd do a bit, I wouldn't do a bit, I'd do a bit. And then one day this kid walked in the gym. Danny Roberts, his name was. He came from Hartcliffe, actually. Big old lump, 18 years old, looked at me and went, I want to change my life. And there was something, you know how sometimes a fighter walks in a room and they have an inner confidence. Yeah. It's not always, but sometimes you see it and you think to yourself, I think this one could be special. Danny had something about him. I don't know what it was, but he had it about him. And I thought, all right. So we started coaching him. We started taking him in, you know, different things. He ended up boxing in national finals. Went pro, but would move to Liverpool at the time and was struggling to sell tickets. So he then went to the UFC. He fought for the Black Zillion, spent 6 months of the year in Florida. So Danny changed his whole life. But he was like there was something about Danny. He used to hit the pads and I'd have to go home on a night and put me elbows in ice for a bit. Do you know what I mean? Because I was shaking. He was just, there was something about him. And that was it. He got me coaching and we started probably from the year 2000. I've been coaching down the Empire. We've been producing champions, like national amateur champions.
Has that been happening for a long time? Because is it like, you know, as in producing national champions? Yeah. Because I never really, you know, been connected in bringing young people to it when it was over the road years ago. But I never really remember knowing, and maybe it wasn't publicised as much, that it was churning out these champions. But
I think
maybe it was. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean,
we're talking 20 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, no, more than that. I suppose I'd argue that we're probably Bristol's most successful sporting club, just nobody knows about us because we've had 4 world champions, British champions, Commonwealth champions come out of the gym. You know, you've had Catley, Stone, Haskins, Selby.
Well, no, that's like...
you know, Adrian Stone and Glenn both got to sort of national finals. So Dean Francis. So we've had world-class fighters from the gym. Yeah. And we've had the amateurs all the way through that have turned out to boxing national finals. So... You know, from that little gym in St Paul's where in the 70s and 80s, probably it was a no-go zone where everybody was welcoming the Empire, even everybody was frightened to go to St Paul's. You know, I mean, all the way through, we've been producing boxers that have gone on to kind of achieve something.
So when you were doing the coaching then, so your involvement now with Empire Fighting Chance, I guess that experience of actually, you know, practically being involved with supporting, you know, boxers, you know, hone their skills and all the rest of it. I mean, not everyone would have been champions that you would have been supporting. So there's something in supporting people that must have scratched an itch for you. What was it?
You know, I think I said it earlier on. You have a bond with them fighters, you know. So I've taken boxers all over the country. In fact, we've taken them into, you know, we've gone to Jersey and boxed in championships or whatever. And it's kind of you and them. And you get into an environment. And like Wales, for example, I remember we boxed in Newport. We were being spat on the way to the ring. They were throwing stuff at us. And I looked at my man.
I can imagine.
And I looked at, I think he was Sean his name was. I looked at him and I went, we're going to knock this geezer out. And like 30 seconds later, he's flat on his back and we're walking back out the ring and I'm looking at him all thinking, yeah, you can have that. Do you know what I mean? So there's a bit of...
So there's a little... Is it the battle? The fact that there's a battle and...
I think there's a bond. You have a bond with them boxers. You do genuinely have a bond. Like I have them now. Like
it's one-on-one, isn't it? I think that's the difference. With all the sports you mentioned, I've been involved in those sports as well, but there's a real difference with boxing.
There is, yeah.
It's literally you against you.
Yeah.
And then you've got your small team.
Yes.
And that small team, the bond you build there is completely different to what you build in an 11-a-side or cricket or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or football.
100%. Me and Jimmy Robot, we used to travel the country with one or two boxers in the back of the car, like often a Thursday, Friday or Saturday night, sometimes 2 of them 3 nights. You know what I mean? And we'd go anywhere, whether it was Manchester for a kid or I remember once we had Bailey box in a final and I think we boxed in like Sussex, Norfolk, and then Sunderland in consecutive weekends, you know? So you just...
That's a mission.
All for no money, all voluntary, got to self-fund most of the time because the club don't have a lot of cash. You're dealing with kids who don't have money. You can't be charging them much, so you can put on the odd show to make it work. But, you know, that's what we did. And I think you build a sense of community, you build a sense of loyalty. Some of those boxers like Darren Hamilton, you know, works back in the gym for 25 years. I've been looking after him in one some shape or form, you know. He went on to become British champion after being homeless. And we just saw 2 young men that we vaguely knew, me and Jamie. We knew their families really, and they were dealing drugs in St Agnes Park. We just went over and said, what's going on? Had a long chat, kind of got them back into the gym, and then just said, the gym's yours. Whenever you want to use it, just use it for free. Just come and do something almost. And didn't think anything of it, but they came back on the Monday with a couple more kids, Tuesday a couple more, Wednesday a couple more, and within, say, 6 weeks, we had 50 kids coming 5 days a week. And then we were like, well, what are we going to do? So we used to do 2 days each and flip a coin for day 3. So I'd come home from work, I'd stop in the gym, I'd do the session, I'd go home. And all we wanted to do, if I'm honest, is the Simples community had always been good to us. You know, the Empire had been there since 1969, 1970, we think 69. So it's been there for like 54, 55 years. In a community that's always been good to us. So we just thought we were doing a bit of work for some local kids that needed something for free, truthfully. But it kind of grew and it grew and it grew. And then it was 2006, this was, so schools had money. A school rang up and just said, you've been working with Dental's Babies Improved, would you consider working with Jamal? We were like, yeah, we will, but it's going to cost you. So we started charging the schools. And then most people don't, most professional boxers. So at the time I'm working full time and Jamie's working in the boxing business. So we're not taking a wage. In fact, I didn't take a wage from 2006 when we started the charity, what turns out to be the charity, until 2017 when I moved over full time. So for 11 years, it was just voluntary. And we had 2 young men who'd both boxed for me, actually, Sarkozy and Power, who wanted to go pro. There's no money in professional boxing, bar like 0.5%, nobody makes enough to live off. They might box 4 times a year, get like £700 a fight, so they're not going to live off it. So I went, listen, there's a job here. You could do a bit of boxing, you could do a bit of coaching for us, you could do some after school sessions and some PTs. And they were like, okay. So basically you can be a full-time in boxing, but you're just going to have to duck and dive. I think Rick did some scaffolding and Dan did some personal training to make up their money. And it just sort of built and built and built. And there was no plan. I didn't really care about running a charity. In fact, I didn't really know anything about the charitable sector. But all I knew is that we were doing some work with kids that I recognised as me or Jamie or Dan or, you know, Ricky. We saw ourselves in them kids and we thought, well, okay, we can give a bit back. We can use the boxing. And then that must have gone on for 6, 7, 8 months. And then 2 things happened, which I think changed everything for us. So the first one was we had a kid sent to us who had obvious mental health issues. And I rang the school, and this was 2006, and they were a bit like, well, yeah, we haven't got many. We don't really know what to do with him. We kind of give him to you to take him off site. So then with breathtaking naivety, I rang CAMS, and I went, oh, I got this young man. He's not too well. Can I book him in? And they were a bit like, well, is he trying to kill himself? No. Is he at crisis point? No. Oh, we can't see him at all. And if we could, it would be. And I remember thinking, that ain't right. How can you have a kid not been able to access support for 12 months? That's just diabolical. And then within 2 weeks, we had another young man who'd been sent to us at the school we're going to exclude. But he'd hang around, he'd set the circuits up, he'd tidy him away, so we couldn't get our heads around it. And in the end, Jamie sat him down and just said, what's going on? And the kid went, oh, I just don't get maths. So rather than hold my hand up so I don't understand it, you ask me a question, I'm kicking off. I'm turning the table over, I'm walking out. So we started to do some basic numeracy to try and keep him in school. Like if you've boxed 3 rounds and each round with 2 minutes, how many minutes have you boxed? Again, not a plan, But we started to realise that we didn't care about, like, the behaviour we didn't care about. And in some ways, the symptoms we didn't care about. What we cared about is, could we make a difference? Because if we couldn't, we were just being busy fools. All we would do was giving up hours and hours of our own time for no money, but making no real difference to the kids. So we started to design programs with psychological and therapeutical stuff, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to change a kid's life. That's all we cared about. That's all we cared about.
I find it's really interesting, because it must have been around that kind of time, 2006, 2008, I don't know exactly, that I was bringing young people from the mill, which you guys are in now. Obviously, it used to be a youth club. Used to bring them over. And I remember Jamie was there, and it must have been, there was an Irish kiddie that was doing...
Sarkozy, Dan Sarkozy, yeah.
Okay, so he was doing a lot of the coaching, and there was no one in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm bringing kids that were kicked out of school, that were that we were working with and supporting. And I don't even think we were paying. I can't. I don't. I think we were just walking over the road, and going over there, and they were doing a bit of this and a bit of that. And I wonder, at that point, and obviously not specifically then, but at that point, whether Jamie started maybe looking at it and thinking, well, if there's organisations that are looking after and supporting young people that have been kicked out of school, and then they're bringing them over to do different activities, and they would have been brought off to do different things, and we support them with other work as well. Why can't you bring it in-house and do it like that? So I'm only reading into this, because when I heard you say about your business analyst, I didn't know about any of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, you must have been at some point thinking, we want to make a difference, and there's a business in that. Because if you, when I was hearing you talk about that a minute ago, I was just like, that's what charities need. They need a business analyst. Do you know what I mean? They need you or others. There must have been a point where you thought, this is actually, there's a way that we can make a difference and it can wipe its own face. Yeah,
there was. I mean, I think it went on for 6 years. Like, for a period, we'd run out of money and we'd put our own money in, right? So if we couldn't afford to pay I found the other week, I was clearing out the loft, and I found one of my old financial predictions, and we had like enough money. We had a week's money in the bank. That was all we ever had. Like, it was a week. We'd run out, we'd pay out of our own pockets, we'd keep the coach going. And then, like, I didn't know nothing about charities. I didn't know you could get grants. Someone knocked on the door and went, I run this. I've got some money. I'd like to pay you to do it. And we're like, what are you on about? Pay us. And she was like, oh, I can give you some money to run these sessions. And she explained it was a grand. And we were looking at each other a bit puzzled, like, what do you mean? You just give us the money? And so she was like, yeah. And then that was kind of the start of it. And then we started to look at what we were doing. And a couple of things happened, actually. So I was invited. So for 6 years, it literally was Empire Boxing Club, doing a bit for a community that we cared about. That was it. Right. And then we initially really cared about St. Paul's, but it kind of got bigger. But the heritage and legacy of the club, Jim is still there as a caretaker, Chris is still there, Terry's still there. So the old boys are still involved, and that's what we cared about. And then in 2012, I was invited to a thing in London about boxing changing lives. And it was a documentary. And while we were there, I met a guy who ran an international charity for fellas of Rio. And he went, well, you do what we do, and we're earning like millions of pounds a year. You're earning like 20 grand a year. Do you want to be a charity? And I remember saying, God, no. I said, I just don't want any part of it. And he was like, no, come on. I said, look, I've got a corporate job. I don't need this nonsense. I just want to help the kids. And he was like, come to Rio, see how it's done. If at the end of that, you don't want to do it, that's fine. If you want to do it, we'll support you. And boxing's the BS business. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to Rio. And I went to see my wife going to Rio. She was like, yeah, that's nice. You know what I mean? And then they sent me the odd email, and I go, oh, I'm still going to Rio. Yeah, of course you are, of course you are. And then like at the end of November, it might have been 2012 then, they emailed and went, right, we want you to come to Rio on this date. I'm working full time. I can't do it. And I swear this is odd and true. Jamie had never had a single conversation with these people up to this point, right? It'd all been through me. And I went, well, I can't go. And he went, well, I'll go.
I bet he did.
He said, I'll go. And then, so he bravely stepped up. And then I remember we'd bought a company in North Wales, is why I couldn't go. And I was sat I was looking at the Mersey estuary. I'd bought the only sandwich left in Sainsbury's, which was some sort of cheese thing. It was pissing down with rain. The water was brown. It was really grey. And it was like 4:00 in the afternoon. He's WhatsApping me pictures of the Copacabana beach or something. And he was like, oh, I've had this day today. And I was like, you just couldn't make this up. And then that was it. He came back and said, you know what? I think we should give it a go. And I was like, seriously? Because I was really still anti. And he was like, yeah, we should give it a go. And he went, we're just going to have to be businesslike about it. And I said, okay, let's try it. And then we started to apply all the stuff we knew in business
But did
to the
Jamie
organisation.
want him? Was he involved in? I don't really know. I just used to see him at the gym, so I didn't. Was he involved in business as well? I thought
Jamie used to run the boxing businesses. So with his dad, so he's run his own businesses.
It wasn't outside of.
No, it was within the gym, and then obviously I did
That's
the
what I
analysis
thought,
stuff. So between us, we had quite a nice blend. I mean, we've been working together. 18 years. We've never really had a crossword.
This is going to go off piste a little bit, but I just think this is really interesting because we spoke off camera, didn't we, very briefly about like the blend of people that makes things work.
Yeah.
And, in the charitable world, which, some people will know about, some people won't know about, I'm sure you'll say a bit more in a bit as well about how things have expanded. But what do you think are the things that have worked well to allow you to go from the point of being a small boxing gym, kids coming in, supporting them, no real money involved in it, and then because you're massive now, but in the sense of your reach, and that doesn't just happen, does it? Like that?
No, I don't know. I mean, we've treated it like a business, so we treat it like a business. We don't like waste. We make sure we can pay staff. We've never done the boom and bust, so we don't take people on for projects. We take staff on, they stay on. We have got good people around us. We always look for the best people we can employ. We're quite ruthless in that. So if we have interviews and they're all okay, then we don't take anybody on. We won't take anybody on unless we think actually they're really quite good.
But how, so from the point of view, and I'm only saying this from the point of view of my limited knowledge, which, whatever, it is what it is that to take people on, if a lot of your funding is coming through, literally putting in applications, to take people on long term with smaller applications, that is quite a big risk because you don't know where the next lot of money is coming from unless you've got other streams of, I don't know, do you make more money from other things? I've got no idea how.
No, it's self.
It
The charity pays for itself. There's no money that comes in from anywhere else. No, you back yourself. So we were in a position where we were selling to schools and we were like, okay, if we take X person on, then we're going to have to sell to 5 more schools. And we go, okay, we'll do that. And so we would back ourselves. I mean, I think sport gives you confidence. Boxing gives you confidence. I think to myself, well, yeah, I'll give that a go. What's the worst that can happen? I get it wrong, but I'll give it a go. So we've always backed ourselves. We've made calculated decisions at the right time. And we've been lucky. We had a period, we just moved into the mill, $500,000 for the redevelopment. From Sport England in George, who was mayor at the time, had helped. And then we got turned down that panel by 2 funders who should have given us money. We should have had it. And I don't know what it was. One of them kind of half suggested it was the boxing they didn't like. And we went for a period where Jamie and Kath, actually, because my wife was doing all the admin for free because she was on maternity leave and we couldn't afford to pay anybody. And then they just said, look, we've got to quit. There's no point in doing this. And so it was like we had 2 weeks and it was pretty bleak, you know what I mean? And we just wanted to give up. And Jamie and my wife were going, well, this is a nonsense. Nobody believes in us. Nobody cares. What's the point in carrying on? And because I'm an analyst, I collected the stats and I kept saying, yeah, but it does work. And then in the end, I reckon towards the end of those 2 weeks, Tim Temple, who worked for the National Lottery, rang up and he went, look, I've seen your bid. And we'd got through the first stage. He said, if you've got 20 minutes, can I come and see you? And what we used to do is I was working full time. So Jamie would pick me up on my lunchtime or whatever. He'd take me back to whatever meeting we had and I'd go back to work. So I said, yes, you pick me up back to the gym. And Tim said, look, if you change these couple of questions, I think you'll get the money. So we went away, we changed what we had to change. We got the lottery. So we'd gone from, pretty much nobody wanted to fund us.
And this was for delivery, but this wasn't capital.
No, just delivery, because we'd had the capital, we'd moved into the mill, we'd got this new building, we're like, oh, this is great. And then suddenly, like, nobody wants to give you any money. And then we found when the lottery funded us, everybody else wanted to fund us. So suddenly it became a lot easier to build. But yeah, it was tough, like I said, we didn't have any money at the start and we didn't have any money after we moved into the mill. And we went for a period, we thought, this is it.
Would you say then that from the point of view from a charity scaling, that getting a building helped? And do you feel like, because people, the general idea from people would be the bigger you get, the bigger your cap gets as a charity, the more money you need to get. Or would you say the bigger that you get, you will then start to be contacted from other funders, philanthropists, people that would want to support it. Is it if you want to become more sustainable, you have to have that growth, or is it the opposite to that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by big, I guess. Because
Bigger. My idea, when I say big, I suppose you suddenly got your own venue, you got a space, and then you're delivering more than just having that gym and having people come in and use that gym. You're then delivering products that are different places, as in sessions elsewhere.
I think there's lots of things. The space was transformative without any question. The gym made a big difference. We had in the old gym, it had the atmosphere, and it was emotional leaving the old Empire. But this new place is state of the art. It's a big, clean, nice space we can use. But also, like I said, we combine psychology and therapy. So we've built a product that works. Alongside that, we measured our impact. And then alongside that, we grew slowly. We've got 40 odd staff now, and it would be easy. This is what sometimes I think the mistakes are made. It would be, we could get more money than we get. But for me, the extra money it often means you've got to employ. And I still haven't seen anything that tells me that the more people I employ, the more impact I make.
Well, that's where I'm at, but I'm nothing. It's not the same kind of situation.
But I think it's true. So I can exponentially increase my headcount. Brilliant. I got 100 people. But then what I can't do is exponentially increase the impact I make on young people by having more staff. So actually, it becomes a noose around my neck. And we end up going, we've got to do this to pay the bills. And you could become an organisation that has to worry about paying your bills, as opposed to an organisation that worries about your impact. And so I think there's that. I don't care what anybody says, our work's good. If you spent any time with us, do
people say it's not? Why do you say that?
I don't, obviously, I think you get criticism at times, probably, but anybody who spends any time with us knows that we care about young people. Anybody who's been in the gym, or people like you. So you said earlier, you ring me up, I'll help. Yeah. That's the way we operate.
Genuine would be the word that I'd say. That was what shone through.
Yeah, and so as a result, I think that people who meet us and funders who meet us think, actually, this is different. I like them too. They care about the kids. There's always somebody in the gym. And I think that there was so it's a combination of stuff. It isn't just size, because size actually, I think, become tricky. We didn't stop through COVID. That helped us. We refused to stop working. Once or twice, I thought, this is possibly a close. And then the police would ring up and go.
We were doing. I think it's through COVID. I was speaking to you because we didn't stop either.
You just can't you?
No, because if you really care, that's when it's needed more than ever, and it freaking well was, wasn't it?
Well, you talk about we talk about resilience, right? And then we go, okay, you've got to be more resilient. This is how you build resilience. I'll throw the towel in. What I'll do is I'll disappear.
Claim a bit of furlough,
and
then again come back smelling. I mean, no one knew how it was all going to transpire, did they?
They didn't. But I went to the board. I said, "Look, we've got some reserves. I think we carry on working. What do you think?"
That's what we've done.
And the board went, "We totally agree," and that's it. And then I think it was May when the restrictions eased a bit. We built an outside gym in the basketball court. We got a builder. We said, "Can you get a frame up?" He went, "Yeah, I can put a frame up." And then we'd have like 6 kids come in. They'd do an hour. The next 6 kids. I think we worked with like 900 kids during COVID. We never stopped. We went to houses and did some patches of grass.
That's what we were doing. It's funny. I don't know if it would have been then. We were doing stuff that we like Morrison's car park in Artcliffe and doing sessions there. And then we were getting all this special bloody spray. And I think that might have been part of what you were saying about you putting the gloves so you can still use the this and the that and online stuff. We were doing the young people doing online box fit sessions. There's always a way, isn't there? If you really care at your core about young people and communities, there's always a way, if you listen to them, to support them in the best way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that for us, it was like we ain't going to stop unless somebody comes and physically says, that's it, you can't do no more. But nobody ever did. And we'd get a phone call from the police to say, look, I've picked this young person up. Would you mind working with them? And they would come to us. So we just kept doing it. We had the Pasco group delivered food parcels to us every week. So we were distributing them amongst the families that we work with. So we just refused to stop. And I suppose there's all the way through our journey, there's been key points in which we appear to have made the right decision. And that decision has pushed us on to the next bit and the next bit, if I'm honest. So we need a bit of luck. We've had funders that have been kind to us and that have continuously supported us throughout periods. I think I'm surrounded by people that care. I'm surrounded by good people. We work hard. I'm still one of the hardest working people I know. So I think that we have this real drive in us. And again, that comes from that working class background and wanting to prove you're good enough.
Yeah.
You always want
never
to prove
thinking
you're good
it.
enough.
Yeah.
Well, I sometimes
You must think that you've done well now, Martin. And if you don't, you have.
Yeah, no, I definitely
But
don't.
I might say that, but
No, I definitely don't. My wife says that. She said, look, and Jamie, we got to enjoy this. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but it might stop tomorrow. It might run out and we got to keep pedaling. So there is that drive that comes from a fear of it ending and not really being part of the gang or it not, what I mean? You feel that you've not.
And we spoke a little bit about this off camera, didn't we? Because we had a little technical glitch. But I just like jumping in then is like feeling part of the gang. It is interesting, isn't it? How things grow, and it sounded like you had that funding application that worked well with Tim from the lottery, and we were just talking about how Tim's got a sport development background, so he has an understanding. He had more of an understanding of boxing and sport in general and what would work well, and hence he was probably fighting your corner to some extent. But obviously, what you do has got to be good, otherwise it makes no difference.
Yeah.
So you're in that position, and it's like. Then it's sitting at other tables, and we kind of spoke about that, didn't we? Off camera when we were getting a bit sorted out. And it feels like that's part of the journey, isn't it? And it's like, I know you've got to have a bit of luck, but do you want to kind of talk us through a little bit about how else you kind of help propel and move yourself forward?
Yeah, I mean...
to succeed, because it's not just about one person or you and Jamie, innit? There's other people, there's other ambassadors, there's other people that have helped.
Yeah, I mean, I think... This sounds a bit trite, but the city's helped us. You know what I mean? Bristol's been good to us. It's supported us when we've needed support. People have come out. 2012, Charlotte Leslie was the reason I was in London. She was the MP for Bristol North at the time. Loved boxing. Rang me up before when she was thinking about becoming an MP and said, Martin, I'm thinking about becoming a Tory MP. And of course, initially I'm thinking, well, what do you want with me? And she went, I really like boxing, but can I come and talk to you about boxing and because I've heard you do some of the work in schools. And I'm like, yeah, come and meet me. She came down. Initially, I was a bit like, well, what does she want? Walked in. I thought, you know what? She gets this. And she actually gets why it's useful. So Charlotte's still involved with us now, I don't know how long that would be, but let's say 15, 16
Is
years
she a
later.
Tory?
Is a Tory,
yeah. I can imagine that might be interesting with some of your other ambassadors and people involved. But good people.
Well, they all get on because they all have, under the heart of it, they all care about the kids that come through our gym, but actually they're all relatively, I think, socially liberal. I think they all actually care about people.
Well, hopefully they wouldn't be involved anyway.
I mean, there was a book by, and I read anything, I read everything, and there was a book by Rory Stewart, I think it was Politics on the Edge or something, and he actually talked about how David
he's definitely
Cameron,
liberal.
Yeah, well, he talked about how Cameron should have promoted people that had Charlotte Leslie's empathy. There's a line in the book that says, we should have had politicians with her empathy. So, she's a good person. She's been a good person to us, a good friend to the charity. So there was that.
What opportunities do you think come from that then? Just give us a bit of an idea of how that
it's sometimes it's just conversations. So it can be as simple as those conversations take place. It can also be that when you're around good people, you learn. These are smart people. And so, and again, with Marvin and I have been friends for a long time. We're friends well before he stood for mayor first time when he got beat by George. And I know he gets criticised, but I see a man of integrity. I see a man that comes to the gym and has done since before he stood for mayor to mentor kids. Doesn't say anything, doesn't publicise it, doesn't talk about it, but he just comes, spends his time helping young people who are struggling. So again, I've got people here that Simon Newitt was chief executive off the record. Simon's a doctor of anthropology. He's a brilliant man. He came to us because he was like, I'm doing a dissertation on young black men not accessing for his doctorate mental health services. I know the work you're doing. We didn't know who he was. He just knocked on the door. Can I interview some of the kids? And we're like, yeah, knock yourself out. Come back. We'll do this. Next thing I know, we're going to try and create a charity. I've rung up Simon. I need some help. He offered to go on the board. He's still involved in the board now. So actually, I suppose there is an element of we've put stuff out there. So most of the people that have helped us, we've helped in some way, shape or form as well. I've supported. And we're quite open like that. And I'm a bit like, well, look, we should all be helping each other a bit, to be truthful. And so we've had that. And then we've been consistent. I think I spoke about when Dante died, 3 years ago. So we were talking and campaigning 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago about knives. It wasn't like this has suddenly become a thing because we were starting to see it creep up. I know it's cyclical. We've stood to our principles. We've been offered money before to run projects, like 6-week projects, and we've gone, well, no, we don't want the money.
What difference is 6 weeks?
Yeah, you can't do nothing with it, so we're not interested in it. So I think, if I'm honest, we've been surrounded by good people. We've stuck to our principles. Our delivery is good. We've had luck when we've needed it. We've been very business-minded about stuff.
I mean, just to put it in there now, though, the fact that you've kind of grown and you're doing things internationally and visiting internationally,
Yeah.
I'd got to say, if you've got people at certain tables that are having those discussions, whether that be a Marvin or a Leslie or other people that are a bit higher up the food chain, then that's got to help, hasn't it? And obviously that's not the only reason. It's got to be good what you're doing. But that's got to help with getting the opportunities to, and I don't know if it's people like that have helped with this, to get the opportunities to suddenly start doing stuff in other spaces and widening your audience.
Yeah, I think, but is
that a part of the journey? It's got to be, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think our ambassadors are great. I think Charlotte's fabulous. I think Marvin's fabulous. I think Alex Beresford's fabulous. They've all helped us in some way, shape or form. They've all come to the gym, seen something they wanted to be involved with, and then have supported us. But also sometimes you've got to make your own luck. So, we've now got a funder that's going to fund us that I can't talk about too much, but comes originally from San Francisco.
What?
They're funding us because of somebody that I met in Oakland, California, that was doing work about gender-based violence that I started having conversations with, and she's recommended them to us. So actually, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to give something of yourself to get something back. And that's what people don't always realise, is that this hasn't just been, people don't do things for us. There might be an introduction and you step into the space. Sometimes you generate your own space by being like offering somebody something or supporting them with nothing in it. And I've done that. I volunteered. I've supported other organisations locally that have been struggling for free. We have a network now of 60 organisations. I think it's 40 boxing clubs across the UK. We've trained and we've supported them all for free. Those clubs now work with 12,000 young people a year. They're turning over between them something like £2.5 to £3 million a year, so they're becoming sustainable. We've done that for nothing. There's no charge. We've paid for them to come down. We had a small pot of money from a funder. In fact, a funder said to me, I had a funder that kept asking me that we wanted to grow and they wanted us to create more empires. And I'm like, well, I don't believe in that. I think the community has the answer. And they kept saying, well, we'd like you to create Empire Fighting Chance Manchester. And said, we were like, well, we don't want to do that. And in the end, Jamie and I went back and said, you know what? If you allow us to train other organisations and not charge them, and for them to put that in their community for our product, they want it, then we'll do that. And they went, okay, we'll do that. So there's 50 organisations, 60 organisations.
And this is all to do specifically with boxing, or is it more?
Yeah,
to do
we teach them with the boxing and psychology. So we give them our program for free. So we've got a 20-point program, not a 20-week program, of psychological principles. They have access to our psychologists. They have access to our business development stuff. We teach them about how to sell to schools. We introduce them to people that might be able to help. We support them for that period. We go and visit them. We do refresher training. We spend time with them. They come to the gym. We educate them. We say, this is how we've done stuff. Some of them might end up being bigger than us. Some of them might end up taking money from us. But from my point of view, if, when the man upstairs calls us, if I look back and think, well, actually, there's 20,000 kids a year that have been supported by what we've done, then it's a life well lived, regardless of how we've been paid. And I think that's what we do. We kind of looked at it and we thought, well, boxing's a unique place. We understand boxing. We understand boxing people. We think we can do this. It was hard work to start with, and boxing people can be hard work. But it wasn't long before the club momentum started. As a result of that, somebody who came on the course and now is Matchroom Boxing's community, head of their community. So he rang us about 9 months ago and said, look, we'd like to support you.
And just explain a bit about Matchroom.
Matchroom Boxing, yeah, I would say they're probably the world's biggest promotions company, one of the world's biggest promotions companies. They promote like Anthony
Eddie,
Joshua,
Barry Hearn,
Eddie and Barry Hearn. They obviously do the darts, they do everything. Snooker. Yeah. And Matchroom HQ is Barry's old house where you can sort of look out across and see Canary Wharf. And so we've been out, we spoke to them, the guys were on board. They actually wanted to put something back, and we're like, well, this is what we want to do. Then their comment was, okay, yeah, we'll back you. So we're now working with Matchroom. We're developing clubs with them. So we're going to make sure there's more boxing clubs trained, more boxing clubs supported, more boxing clubs can be sustainable. So in the future, there's going to be 100 or so boxing clubs that have been trained and supported by us.
Wow.
that are offering stuff back. And I think that's helped in the international stuff. Yeah, we've been in spaces. Dante's death was one where I became a pain in the ass because what happened shouldn't have happened. And you've got a 14-year-old kid who walked in our doors who died at 18, 4 years. You know, he was a kid we cared about. He was a kid we loved. And that led me to being invited to take part in a Brookings Institute United Nations working group. That went on for 6 months.
How does that, like, you make it sound like the kind of jump from a young person tragically being, you know, losing their life too young, to then being a pain in the ass, to then being at the UN United Nations. Like, that's quite a... How does that manifest?
Well, I think you put yourself in the window. I'm not a great criticiser, right? Because I don't think that solves anything. We can all sit and moan about the situation not being very good, but that don't change it. So what we need to do is fix something. Yeah. So I kept going, boom, and I was looking at, well, okay, what's worked elsewhere? What could we do? How could we work? What might be better? I met somebody from the States who was over, I think it was over in Bristol, actually. They came to the gym for like 2 hours. Just, that was it. Just had a conversation. I picked their brains a bit. Didn't think anything more of it. I met people from Harvard, same principle really. That was through the council, actually. They were over and they wanted to see our project. But ultimately what happened was I kept trying to find how we could be better. That led her to the invite. That invite was one of those where, and I joke about it now, but it was horrendous. You know that you have to introduce yourself, got that creeping death, and everybody sat there, and you know the one who goes first is always going to be the biggest show off, right? Yeah. And I joke about
or the one that's pulling their pants enough to just think, I just got to get this done quick.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, I do that, and because I'm a show off, it's because I'm shitting my pants and I'm sat there for the next, I don't know how long. I'll be like,
I'm sat.
It's harder.
It's harder, yeah. Well, and I was sort of thinking, well, see what happens. So the first geezer speaks. My name's Thomas. I spent 8 years working for President Obama on the violence reduction strategies. And I'm thinking, like, that got to be the one. The next one spoke. My name's Santiago. I spent 14 years working with Nelson Mandela. And then I thought to myself, well, what am I going to say? So they get
mine is mine, and I'm a gashead.
Well, I went, Martin, and as you all know, I co-founded Empire Fighting Chance. I thought, well, I bet you're all too polite to question it. And so nobody went, who's Empire Fighting Chance? He went, oh, okay. Yeah, so that was it. And then it was Santiago was discussing something. And I thought, well, yeah, it's right in theory, but that's not what I see. So I kind of went, listen, this is what we do, and I'm not sure. And Santiago messaged me and said, I really like what you're saying. Can we carry on talking? So every 2 weeks for about 6 months, probably, Santiago and I met online, and Jamie joined as well. So Santiago spent 14 years working with Nelson Mandela, went back to Medellin in Colombia, post-Escobar, to help the city regenerate, because he was originally Colombian, he's Colombian. And we got on well. And we were exchanging ideas, exchanging knowledge. And he went, you should come to the city. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, no, come, we'll sort it. Come and visit us. So he arranged it for 7 of the team went out. We spent a week in Medellin. We went to visit, we visited political figures. We went to universities. We visited communities. We went and spent the whole week understanding how they tackled the extreme violence they had. Now, at one point, it was the world's most dangerous city. 7,000 people a year were being murdered. And I'm going, well, how did you do this? How did you do that? And then stuff they were saying, we were like, oh yeah, we could nick that, actually. That would work in Bristol. So we started to change what we were doing. And one of the things that, you know, is like wherever you go, like inequality drives violence, and also finding somewhere safe that they can access helps prevent violence. Yeah. And they've built these social hubs around the transport centres. And I'm like, well, what? Yeah, it's a masculine culture. How do you get a geezer to walk in here then? And they went, well, to be honest, they see it every day when they get on the cable car or they get on the tram. So it feels part of their community. So again, it's not necessarily about what you build. It's about having spaces where people feel safe. And as long as we keep creating them, and we keep those environments, we can make a difference, which is what we're doing. So now we've got some planning permission to do a side annex, which is going to have space downstairs, which is going to be free for community groups. We want to find community groups that want to work with the young people we work with, whether that's to help them with the neurodiversity, whether that's to help them financially, whether that's to do anything creative, cookery. And we're going to give them a space free on set times during each day, so young people and their families can access support. That's because we can't do it. It's not our brand.
But you know what you know, and know that other people specialise in different things. Yeah. I guess the key thing is being in a situation. So you are now you're in a situation where you can actually, all right, we can be that hub, and we can enable others to do the things that they do well, so young people get the best impact.
Which is all that really matters to me ultimately, because there's definitely more money in corporate life than there is charitable life. So
you're going to set up one in South Bristol?
Well,
free space.
Yeah, we'd be happy. In fact, we are keen to work with organisations in different areas. We don't want to do a thing. We want to work with an organisation. So we're doing some stuff with South Media at the minute, and we're sharing resources. They're doing some career stuff. We're doing some boxing, whatever it is. So we can work in different communities, but it has to be with organisations, because we can come and deliver boxing, but actually it makes much more sense.
Because you parachute in. I mean, you can try and recruit people, and you probably will. I think Empire, you've got a big enough name, you probably will. But I guess the point is, if you really believe in community and young people, you're only going to end up impacting on those other place-based organisations, which have been doing a lot of different, probably different to what you're doing, for a long time. But it might impact on them being able to continue.
And it's not right. Whereas I could work with them, and we could say, well, actually, what we could do is make our boxing part of your delivery offer if you want. And then another organisation goes, well, that sounds quite good. Then it might be, I don't know, Tuesday at 3:00, we could deliver 2 hours of boxing. So you're still getting the service, but what you're not doing is losing the young people, losing this. There's no real competition. We're starting to collaborate. So we do that in different areas. And then, like I said, it's been one of those where we've articulated our beliefs strongly. We fought for what we believe in. We've got traction nationally. We've got traction internationally. We're going to work in Canada in April, by the looks of it. So we've been commissioned to train organisations out there. So, it's been a...
Do you pinch yourself every now and then, Martin? Because the minute, you're rattling on about your childhood and everything else, and then do you ever sit down and think, hold on?
Well...
Come on!
Sort of, no.
Well
and my daughter had a go at me, actually. My 22-year-old daughter had a go at me over
Good
Christmas.
on her. So you got to at least acknowledge, that what you're doing, and you're doing it for the right reasons. Everything you're saying, you've got to take that on board.
Well,
I don't do that, but do you know what I mean?
No, well, I think I'm terrible at it, but she had a bit of a pop at me, and I can't remember what it was about, but the charities, I have met great people, really great people. And I'm a big, obviously, because I'm a working class kid, I love darts, right? I'm a massive darts fan. I love the darts. And I know a couple of,
good for teaching maths, just saying.
It is good for teaching maths. And I had one of the players, Simon Whitlock, with given us some signed shirts, and she gave one to her boyfriend's dad, and he was really chuffed. And she said, "Dad, you just need to accept that this is quite nice, and what you're doing, and the people you're meeting, and the fact that you go into work and you enjoy it is actually quite nice." And for the first time, I thought, well, maybe she's right. All I'm looking at is how do I make sure this works tomorrow? But maybe I should be thinking,
well, it's difficult, isn't it, to take your foot off the pedal, because you said, you've already, you're always thinking this might go tits up at some point. So you're constantly you're pushing and pushing. But I guess, otherwise, what is it for? Yes, you're making a difference, but you're only human. Yeah. You've got to sit back at some point and kind of appreciate what you've done and give yourself a pat on the back.
Well, maybe not pat, but my daughter did tell me to make sure that I enjoy it, because like I said, I've met brilliant people. I've done brilliant things. And I probably don't take them for granted. That's not fair either. But I'm very much like, okay, that's done, but what about? And, even then, Christmas or at 10:00 at night, and I'm no doubt you're the same. You're thinking about, work, or you've got your problem, or you've got your email. It's 24/7.
Second phone.
Yeah, well, that might be an option to turn the actual work phone off. So
just started that. Oh my God, it's like you're still worrying about what's going on and thinking about things, but at least there's some kind of separation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's none.
No, there is none. There is none. Right.
I just listened to everything you said. It's amazing, and I can see the journey from a distance based on what I said to you about getting young people involved way back when, and it's absolutely amazing. And chatting to you now more openly about the kind of things and the journey and how that's happened is really interesting, and hopefully is interesting for other people. I think probably from my point of view, from listening to a lot of the stuff with a youth work hat on. I wonder, quite a lot of this kind of this growth, and maybe the next chapter, it feels like it's linked a lot with violence and the fact that there's lots of knife crime going on in, not just in Bristol, in other places. It's something that is definitely rising. That's not, just saying words for the sake of it. You're an analyst. I'm pretty sure we got all the stats to improve that. And I know you mentioned to me about some meetings that are going to be starting in Bristol. Yeah. And I think, am I right in saying it's kind of looking at that and violence reduction and that kind of thing, and pulling in ideas from different places, which I now see where these ideas are coming from based on you going to other places. Do you feel like that's the kind of thing? I mean, it'd be good to hear your thoughts about that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But as well as that, with what you're doing with connecting and supporting other boxing clubs, is the hope that you're supporting them in the same way and they're going to try and kind of grow in the same way of this kind of formula you spoke about? Or is it literally just supporting them to deliver boxing sessions in a more sustainable way?
Yeah. I mean, the boxing club bit first is up to them. If they want to grow, we'll give them our advice. We've got so much wrong.
And you're paid, because this feels like it's like you've got to a position where
yeah.
are you somehow funded or you're sustainable enough to be able to be in the background to support others without necessarily physically doing a lot of the things, which I know you are doing, delivering things. Yeah. But that feels like that's the next step on that you're in now, where you can...
Yeah, I think from a delivery point of view, and it's a point that I make frequently, if the next kid that walks through our doors doesn't have the best possible chance of succeeding, then the rest of it's a nonsense. We're failing.
Yeah.
So our delivery in Bristol will always be our delivery in Bristol, and it should always be as good as it should be. We can learn from everybody else. That's what we're open to. We're not overly emotional about it. Again, maybe it's the analyst in me, but like, you'll be able to go anywhere and you talk to somebody else and you go, I like that. That's a good idea. Oh yeah, we could do that. How did you do this? Oh, okay, I could
We're all
do
magpies, aren't we? Like
Well,
that's
we
how
should
the
be.
world evolves. That's
Yeah.
how humans have evolved.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you saying that, if people aren't like thinking that, then, you know.
So the boxing club can be a good two-way relationship. So that's slightly separate. What we learn, we pass on. What we learn from them, we pass through the group. What I think is that I love boxing. I've been involved in the amateur club for 20 plus years before that. So my life is involved boxing at different points. I think that boxing clubs are uniquely placed in communities. Pretty much every community in the world has a boxing club.
Yeah.
So what we would
Is that still the case though? Because that's what, kind of where I was saying what I was saying.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine a lot of places are struggling. If I think they must have a similar kind of situation as youth centres and youth clubs, and in some ways
they definitely have. And I think what we've got with the boxing clubs thing is that the amateur boxing clubs have often, so there's over 1,000 in the UK. But if you go to Ghana or you go to Canada or you go to Medellin, there's still a boxing clubs. And so they're trusted, they're part of a community, they've been there 100 years in some cases. Mount Colliers in Moston and Match has been there 100 years. So what we could do is we can train and support those whilst maintaining our own delivery. And I think those two things will have to coexist, because I'm not interested in having an organisation that just grows if the work's not done.
Well, it's good to hear, because it does seem pretty pointless, doesn't it? Because that's got to be the core of what you do.
But then, how do you train someone? You could train them, but within the need changes constantly. So if you miss the need, then you're out of date, and what you're training young people, what you're training people to deliver to young people isn't right. So if you're not delivering, you don't know anything.
This has just come to me, and I'm probably going to seem like a right plonker saying this. I watch like cooking programs every now and then, or whatever things, and I always think, oh, they got a restaurant, and then they're going off and they're going to different places. And this isn't a bad thing. Going to different places, and they go on to that restaurant. Oh, and Rick, what's his chops from Cornwall? Yeah, he's writing down. He's like, all right, that's a book. And then he goes back, and then they put that on the menu. I'm not saying it's the same, because what you're doing has got social value and benefit, and you're going off and like by doing that as well, you're providing the service and you're learning from others. I mean, it sounds like a good thing, and it's great that you've got yourself into that situation. And from a personal point, my own personal point of view, you can see that it's coming back to Bristol and it's supporting young people here. So it's a great thing. What do you think is the hope with the meetings you're talking about? And I haven't spoken to you about it, so sorry to put you on the spot if there hasn't been anything more like discussed.
No, I mean, we haven't had the meetings because of Christmas. So
what's the idea? What's the hope?
So there's two ways of looking at it. Well, there's many ways, but there's two. This is driven because 4 young people that have used our gym in 3 years have been killed, and 2 died within a few weeks of each other. And when Eddie, who'd been to school with Serena, who got killed, I reached out to Peace in Our Cities, which I'm a member of. Like I said, and I just said to him, listen, we've lost somebody else. This is ridiculous. What can we do? And I didn't really, and this sounds brutal, but at the time I wasn't that bothered about what Bristol could do. What I cared about is how could Empire be better? What had we missed? Had we missed something? Could we have been better? What could our services do? Tell me what best practices, tell me what the evidence tells me, tell me how we can do something different. And they went, well, actually, there's this concept, and they call it an office, but I think they're now changed into a council of violence prevention. So again, they don't talk about reduction, they talk about prevention.
Yeah. Well, this. I mean, that is like a bloody that's been there forever.
Yeah, but we don't do that. We talk about violence reduction in this country. We talk about
that's
arrests.
The units, isn't it?
Yeah, we talk about arrests. We talk about a criminal justice lens. But we know that's not going to prevent it, because actually, most of the time, violence driven by inequalities, there's a social justice problem. So how do we make things different? And they've got these, they call them coalitions of violence prevention, where basically they've got organisations. So I would call them, I think they call them grassroots organisations, which is a nice plug for you. But
good name.
Grassroots organisations. So they've got organisations that deliver to young people. But the idea is that they collaborate. They get funded to work together. So rather than expect the same small number to do more or get all the money, or actually just do more for less, what they say is, well, we've got a cohort of organisations that are doing work that is not only is impactful, but is measurable and is shown to be best practice for violence reduction. Then those organisations are funded to collaborate. So they create this office, but this office isn't a true office. It's like maybe one or two people, but there's a board, and each member of that board is an institution like the police or grassroots communities. One seat, one voice, one vote. So we start to work on an equal footing.
Interesting, based on what I spoke to you off camera about.
And that's
it
the
might
point.
Flip that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so the point is like the power dynamic needs to be adjusted, because actually everybody needs to have a voice. And I think of stuff, and this is probably a bad example. Delroy Hibbert, you probably know.
I know Del very well. Another gashead.
Yeah, he is another gashead, an educated man. But I sometimes used to look at Del, and he was down in Felix Road or whatever, and I think, who's really funding you for the work you're doing? Because the work you're doing is good. And who's actually going to Del, listen, make sure you're paid for this. So you've got the small end of these people that dedicate their lives to helping others. They don't really get the reward they should do, even though they're doing fabulous work.
Because they can't do everything. And we're in that situation.
Absolutely.
If you're on the front line and you don't have that same kind of network of support and, the kind of things you were talking about, really, how you've grown, then you're always, how do I get the money to pay for this? And in the end, your drive is actually to make a difference. Then you're always just like, oh, well, maybe I haven't got them, but I'm not going to stop because this is what drives me. Yeah.
And I think that what you do, so a good example is the one that we, so there's one in Edmonton, and there's one in called a cruise in Argentina, and they're often held up as the best two examples of this. And the idea being is that they don't replace any services. They sit alongside, in our case, it would be, say, the public health and the police, but actually it's a way of mobilising and operating grassroots organisations that are actually doing the work. They get funded for their time. They have an equal say in how they do it. If there's an incidence of violence, then actually that incidence of violence needs to be responded to. There's a statutory response, which I understand, but there also should be a civilian response. The research shows that the best officers are civilian-led. They don't sit within bureaucratic institutions.
It must be longer term, the impact, if it's supported and decided by people that it actually impacts on.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah.
And I think where's your problem? This is the problem. How can we work together? What organisations are working in there? What ones are doing it in an evidence-based way that are proven to prevent or reduce violence? Or these are the 5. Okay, how are we going to measure it? And then they get funded. And so those organisations that have been successful worldwide, they have somebody whose sole job really is to concentrate on bringing money in and creating an environment where you're funded to collaborate. And in Edmonton now, they work with the council. The council give the city, the municipal city, give them money because it's been so successful. They've kind of gone, yeah, you handle this bit, we'll fund you. So what I'm looking to do is create something broadly similar in Bristol where all those organisations that do the work can sit around a table, work out how we could tackle it and be paid. Now, they may never get paid what they're worth, but as long as we can find ways of making it sustainable, then we've got half a chance of doing things properly. Otherwise, you're going to lose small organisations that can't afford to do it. Well, that's a disgrace.
Yeah, well,
you'll end up with 2 or small 3 big organisations. And I'm not saying that we're not big, but our mentality isn't that we're big. But, what we do well.
You are, based on everything you said, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but in my mind, I'm not. But what we do well, right? But we don't do lots of things. So we're not an answer to violence. And anybody who claims they're an answer to violence is either deluded.
There is no one answer, is there? That's the point. It's multi-layered. And that's why when you said what you said about like those meetings, that's what sounded interesting to me. I mean, I think I said it at the time. It's just like the issue always is with those, people that are on the front line, those organisations that are doing that are smaller, is capacity to be at
100%.
Meetings. And let's be honest, there are lots of meetings that go on and not necessarily the action that comes from them. And maybe there is, but just people don't have capacities. But even just hearing what you've just said then, it feels like at least it's looking towards specifically trying to create the environment where the things that matter based on what local people think can continue to happen or can start happening. And if there's something like it's making you like a tribe or whatever you want to call it, an office of people, and then you've got a central kind of person that's funded to get the funding to fund all of it based on the votes. I mean, none of this is rocket science. I think about the things that we tell a gap with living talking circles and God knows what, where everyone has to say, they have to have the stick and they talk and everyone, and then what their vote counts. All this kind of stuff has been happening for millennia in different cultures, but it's good. It doesn't matter, does it? That it's been brought to a position that might help the city and bring people together in an equal way. And I think the equal bit
the equal is the important bit. So like nobody is suggesting, I'm certainly not suggesting that nobody in the world's ever done this before. What I do see is that where it's worked because it's civilian led. It's led by so the easiest thing in the world to do for anybody, I'm not saying this happens, but the easiest thing in the world to do is to go and go, I love those three organisations. They're quite big or they're financially stable. Let's give them the money to solve the problem.
They'll be able to jump onto things a lot quicker. They've got people that can manage that money. It's easier. We see it happen all the time.
But the evidence shows that violence is tackled at a hyper-local level. So the hyper-local level means sometimes the young people only trust somebody that could be in 4 square streets of their house. It could be as simple as that.
There's a relationship with them.
100%.
That's basically the core point of it, and it's the intervention, isn't it?
And you want to trust them. So if you want to do it at a hyper-local level, which we know is the most successful approach, and you think that you can reduce violence at that hyper-local level, then the only way you do that is involving hyper-local players or actors or whatever. So you have to work in communities, and it has to be people from that community delivering that service. Mm-hmm. That's what the evidence shows. The reports I've seen, the people I've spoken to, that keeps coming up. So what I'm trying to do is find a way that we could possibly get that funded. So actually, we may bury less young people. We may stop them picking up a knife, and we know that knives aren't the sole issue. So how do we make Bristol fairer? How do we make it more equal? We work with employers. We're trying to challenge the way that employment, interviews are done, because actually it excludes a huge chunk of the kids that we work with. So how do we just need to make a shift? And I'm not saying we'll do it, and I might be a busy fool, but I know that what we're doing for me still isn't as good as I'd like it to be. And I think that if we settle for this okay, then we've created a culture where okay is all right. Nice. And okay then means young people are going to die and we'll wring our hands, but we're okay with it.
Well, what young people need changes over time. So what we do and deliver to support them is to change with the times. Yeah. And it's refreshing to hear that. I'm not saying others don't do that as well. But
I'm sure they do. There's a lot and the trouble is, I think there's a lot of great organisations in the city, actually.
There is.
So if we could fund them, imagine how good it would be.
Yeah. I mean, it would do what we were saying about off camera, what I was saying about, youth service, blah, 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 being funded, and it takes away the pressures and the strains, and it directs everyone's energy and a lot of talented people's energy into doing the things that make a difference to young people. What you're talking about is that same thing. And I guess the difference would be that it would be more multi-layered than just youth work. It would be, different organisations that link in with communities in a variety of different ways.
Yes.
Which creates that bigger package of support, which is what's needed, because it's one thing fits all. It isn't one thing that fits all.
It definitely isn't. And then you sit in a room and the police might go, we've got a problem here. You look around, you go, okay, those are the 4 organisations that do it. This is what they do. We know how to measure it. So actually what you're invested in already is you're invested in an organisation that's proven, because the efficacy of what they do based on the methodology they use and the impact they're measuring. So what you're starting to do is promote best practice. You can share stuff. In Canada, for example, they call themselves a backbone organisation, so they also help build capacity. So they might write a bid for an organisation. They might help an organisation do the reporting for the bid.
Wouldn't that be the bloody dream?
Well,
Yeah.
but it should be our dream. We
Yeah.
should move to something where actually collaborative stuff is funded properly, not one or two people, but all of us are in a pot where we get genuine opportunities to do the work we care about with other good people.
And I guess the point of how this happens is seeing it working elsewhere. Why can't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've done various different things over time where you've looked at different research in places, Scandinavia, here, there, and everywhere. And you do think to yourself, if you see things that work well in places that aren't that dissimilar to here, with the actions and reactions of young people and the culture and the society they live in, why the hell don't we try those things now? So
just nick it. I mean,
it's making a difference. It's not even nicking it. It's just spreading the love, isn't it? Sharing.
And then, in my experience, what I found is everybody is really generous about sharing their time. So I
think at the level that you're talking about, it takes away the kind of the challenges in the voluntary sector where everyone's fighting to pay the keep the lights on, pay the wages, and do the work, and they see it on the coalface.
Yeah.
When you get above that layer, then it's probably this is where you're getting that. Well, no, this has worked on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And things are shared because it's not so cutthroat. Am I wrong? I don't know.
I think it's a disgrace that everybody's fighting for the same banknote. You know, and that says a lot about us as a country, that we are fighting. You know, we should be forcing collaboration because that's how we get the best result. At the level that, you know, some of those people, what I found is they've been incredibly generous. Like Santiago gave up a week of his time. You know, and that was it was brutal, 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. He's showing us around, he's taking us different places, we're meeting people, we're talking to experts, academic experts in organised crime, we're talking to the police, but they're generous. They give you they'll give you their time, they'll give you their efforts. So all these people that we've dealt with over the years have been incredibly kind. And I suppose that is the mark of those that you want to work with, because that's just what we should be doing. You know, I mean, the OVP stuff we're talking about, if organisations don't want to collaborate, that's fine. They get it, but they can't really be part of that. But everybody I've spoken to so far seems to want to collaborate. So I think that we're in a situation where there's a power imbalance. Those that hold the money almost create a dogfight.
Yeah. Maybe they do, and even with the collaboration, there's still that underlying kind of putting yourself in the right place to kind of benefit from different things. And I'm not saying that happens like everywhere, but it feels a little bit more kind of refreshing about this kind of voting thing, about what decisions come across. And if you've really got a real kind of mixture of small and bigger and different kind of different sectors and different things that people are delivering, then you're going to get a true representation. It's a little bit like what's it called, where you have like this civilian, oh god, I can't remember what it's called, but you basically just got lots of different people from communities that all come together and vote on things, and so you've got a wide perspective of what's needed, but with a view that everyone will get a piece of the pie to make it happen. Martin, it has been interesting chatting to you. I never would have known your business journey and how you've connected that and made that work. And it all makes sense. You know, everything that you said, it makes sense to me. I guess the big thing is that you're doing something which is now going to potentially impact on even more people, but you're still staying true to what's happening in Bristol and doing exactly what you just said that you're learning from others, is sharing the potential for others to be able to kind of, increase their impact as well. And that can only be a good thing. So from me, I want to thank you. And thanks for coming. I hope the toilets get sorted out pretty quick.
Well, and the showers and the heating. I'm worried about the heating. It's too cold to be sat in an office with no heating today. I bet you turn your phone on a minute and be... fingers crossed they fixed it.
Yeah, but no, thanks for coming on. And thanks for sharing.
No worries at all, mate. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Cool.